Vampires have gone through a lot of mutations over the years, from Dracula to Nosferatu to Lestat, but one of its newest incarnations is the parasite vampire.
The strain began to popularize the parasite vampire in 2009. Del Toro's vampire apocalypse is brought on by worm-spewing, body-morphing, tongue-spitting bloodsuckers. If you get bit even once, the worms get into your system and you cannot get them out. Then they begin to change you. Unnecessary parts of you drop off, your esophagus changes into a stinger, and you gain a taste for drinking people dry.
And as unique as all this sounds, Del Toro didn't do it first. As far as we know, that honor goes to YA writer Scott Westerfeld, the guy who brought you Uglies and Afterworld. Westerfeld published Peeps in 2005, and it's been flying under the vampire radar ever since. Full of parasitology, rats, cats, and references to sex, it's sad that Peeps doesn't get its due.
So let's take a look at the origins of this creepy new incarnation of the vampire.
Cal was rudely welcomed to New York City when the girl he lost his virginity to gave him an unwelcome present. And no, it's not the syphilis or the gonorrhea that you'd usually expect. This is Echinococcus cannibalis, or the vampire parasite. But Cal's kinda lucky. He's actually a carrier, which means he's immune to a lot of the downsides of this parasite. On the upside, he gets super strength, and extreme metabolism, night vision, and extreme horniness.
But on the downside, he can never kiss anyone ever, because that's how the parasite spreads. And he's in the process of hunting down his progenitor and his ex-girlfriends, who he accidentally infected, making them parasite positives, or Peeps.
In his quest to find his progenitor, he runs into a girl named Lace, who helps him trace the origin of the parasite, as well as track the vampire conspiracy that is now tracing its way through New York City.
And as outlandish as a parasite that turns you into a vampire might sound, Westerfeld manages to make it very believable. Between each chapters, there are explanations and descriptions of real-life parasites and how they operate in real life. How they manage to go from host to another host, how they manage to change their hosts, and how they've managed to meddle with evolution, and more.
You will both live for and be absolutely terrified by these inserts, because number one, these diabolical little buggers actually exist, and number two, if you're like me and you know nothing about parasites, you have no idea just how powerful these little buggers are, and it is horrifying. Within one or two of these inserts, you will be absolutely convinced that there could be a vampire parasite out there somewhere.
Cal is a decent hero. He knows what he's about when it comes to the parasite, and tracking down his exes and his progenitor makes for an interesting yet unusual adventure. Even though Cal is basically a really, really horny superhero, he very rarely uses his powers, which there's never really a real reason given, which is kind of sad because it could have easily been written into the plot.
His companion Lace gets on my nerves. And it's not that she's not smart or capable or have a personality, it's the way that she talks. She starts every sentence with dude or ends it with duh, and it hurts my brain. It just gets on my nerves and I kind of want to punch her in the face. All I can think of is stoners going, dude. So what happens when somebody gets infected with the parasite?
Well, it's not very pretty. See, when you get infected with the parasite, you start to go a little bit nuts. As the parasite takes over and changes your biology, you start to hate everything you once loved. Were you a big Elvis fan? Well, now everything that reminds you of the king will cause you to run away screaming in terror. This also helps explain why religious people who are transformed have an aversion for crosses and any other religious iconography.
You also get a giant craving for raw meat and may occasionally cannibalize your neighbor. No biggie. You also get extreme light sensitivity and... oh yeah! You also attract a giant brood of rats who you then infect with your parasite and then they serve you as their master. Cal is immune to all the downsides of the parasite and only gets the really cool side effects like super strength, etc., etc., etc.
Cal also works for the Night's Watch. And I know what you're thinking. But no, not that Night's Watch. This one has a little less ice wall and a lot more paperwork. And as an organization that predates the New York City government, they work underground and are complete bureaucrats. Which is, a lot more funny than it sounds. They have forms for everything. And I just really, really love the idea of this super secret vampire hunting organization that is bogged down with paperwork.
They also have this crazy machine that lets you print out fake government ID. Also very cool.
Peeps isn't perfect, though. Cal and Lace are investigating the mystery of what happened when someone was turned into a peep in an apartment building, and the issue sort of falls to the wayside, and you're left to come up with your best guess of what exactly happened.
The dialogue also reads a little stilted, and some parts could have been edited down a little. Also, the big twist at the end kind of comes out of left field and is way more supernatural than anything else in the novel. But these things don't get in the way of an interesting premise.
You come out of Peeps feeling like you've learned something new, and that doesn't really happen as often as you'd hope. And it touches on a lot of issues that a lot of teen fiction books tend to avoid, like sex and STDs. It doesn't really do much with them, unfortunately, but the only other teen fiction book we've come across that has ever mentioned STDs blatantly is Kingdom of Little Wounds.
So yeah, as the birthplace of the parasite vampire, it's worth the read. And it's also the first novel I've ever read where I've actually been convinced that vampires could exist. So have fun being terrified by parasites, guys.